Mr. Speaker, on rising, I give God thanks for sparing us as a nation and as a parliament that we can all gather once again to discuss the people's business and to recommit ourselves as instruments of his will. Mr. Speaker, you will understand if I thank the delegates of the Jamaica Labour Party my parliamentary colleagues, members of the party, workers, well-wishers, Jamaicans for their prayers and support, and for their participation in a democratic exercise that reaffirmed my leadership and their faith in that process. I stand here to address the nation because of them. Mr. Speaker, I did not win a prize. The people have reposed trust in me. And I well know that I can't do it alone. Audley and I make a fantastic team.
We are like that.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to recognize members of the diplomatic corps who are here in the gallery. I would also wish to especially acknowledge some students from Penwood High School who are here in the gallery as well. Mr. Speaker, I wish to specifically recognize my councillors, Councillor Delroy Williams, Councillor Christopher Townsend, and Councillor Caretaker Glendon Salmon. Mr. Speaker, let me acknowledge members of the Junior Shadow Cabinet who have joined us today. They are a group of young, vibrant, energized, patriotic Jamaicans who represent the future, and they have a passion about building our country. Also joining us today are members from the private sector, the church, civil society. They play a critical role in national development. The opposition pays keen attention to their views and is always eager to partner with them for the advancement of the nation and its people. Mr. Speaker, my family is my refuge. My mother, a retired civil servant who ensured that I received the education I needed to be where I am today, is here with us. My dear wife, Juliet, is also here. She has been a tower of strength in everything I do. She's a pillar of support, confidant, partner, and friend. And for the first time, my two sons are coming to see their dad in Parliament. Adam and Matthew are also here. I work feverishly to secure a better future for Jamaica, not only for them, but for all children of Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, the people of West Central St. Andrew are my extended family. It is always a source of great pride to see literacy rates increasing year after year in the 4 primary schools in the constituency. I am of a firm belief that the most effective vaccine against crime and poverty is education. It means that more of our children will be able to gain knowledge and understanding and make greater use of the opportunity that schooling provides. Mr. Speaker, West Central St. Andrew, like all the constituencies of the Western Belt in Kingston, West Kingston, and the Prime Minister's constituency of South West St. Andrew are badly in need of serious urban renewal. including the former Minister of Finance, South St. Andrew, yes, badly in need of urban renewal. Some of the oldest communities in our capital city. Mr. Speaker, face serious challenges due to lack of proper infrastructural development and maintenance. The housing stock in some of these areas have deteriorated to the point where there's little or no market value to spark regeneration. This year, Mr. Speaker, we hope that the National Works Agency will finally sign the contract to fix Woodpecker Avenue, one of the main thoroughfares in West Central St. Andrew. Mr. Speaker, the universal cry in West Central over the past few weeks, and I suppose right across Jamaica, was a cry for water. We have pipes, but many of the water mains are old, corroded, leaky, and not sized to deliver the volume and pressure sufficient to meet the demands of the constantly growing populations in those areas. The situation is made worse during the drought period. The complaints that I have received suggest that the period of water lockoffs are too long. Most households, to my certain knowledge, cannot store more than a day's supply of water. So by the second day of the lockoff, the entire community is in crisis. And remember, Mr. Speaker, we don't have enough water trucks to respond. So this year, Mr. Speaker, through the Constituency Development Fund, I will be trying my best to assist large households that have many children and elderly, with black tanks, those plastic water storage tanks. They will be made available, rationed in the best way possible to assist residents of those areas with storage capacity. That's the best I can do, Mr. Speaker. It's a partial solution, it's a local solution, but at least it will help during the drought period. Mr. Speaker, the most important challenge that faces us now as a country is ensuring that we stay true to our vision of making Jamaica the place to live in safety, work for prosperity, raise healthy families, and operate in a business-friendly environment. Mr. Speaker, it is our vision and belief that every Jamaican can attain prosperity. But if we are not honest about how we got to where we are today, our ambitions will be merely a pipe dream. For years, we have been like the children of Israel, who were led out of colonial Egypt with a promised land in sight. Mr. Speaker, interesting it is that if one were to do a geographic assessment of the journey from Egypt to Israel, it would only be about 2 weeks by foot. But the Israelites ended up spending 40 years in the wilderness, going around in circles, repeating their mistakes after mistakes. Mr. Speaker, over the past years, we have found ourselves being made the same promises, being sold the same vision, how we are firm and how we should stand firm, that the progress should not stop, that we should log on to progress. We're not changing course. It's a new beginning. Yes. This is about people power. Yes. But where did it all take us? Mr. Speaker, like the Israelites, we have ended up spending generations in the wilderness, going around in circles, being subject to the same pain and punishment. Mr. Speaker, the poor Israelites. Mr. Speaker, like the Israelites wandering in the deserts of Egypt. Jamaicans are now asking the question, where are we going? There is a sense of uncertainty, unease, and despair about the future of our country. And the answer comes from the Minister of Finance. The answer comes in this form. It comes in this narrative of a newly converted, market-oriented, no, capitalist is an outdated term.
Evangelist.
He is now a market disciple.
Disciple of the market.
An interesting article was written a few Sundays ago comparing the IMF negotiations of the 70s and now, and saying, my, how things have changed, because yes, there are members of the team who were there in the 70s who are there now, and how different their positions have been. And we welcome change. And if you can change for good reason and you see the logic and you see the light, we welcome you. There's no problem in changing. But the answer from the newly converted minister about where we are going comes in this narrative. And you will identify with these statements, ministers, they're all cited. For too long we have lived above our means. Now we are determined to live within our means. And if the revenues do not come in, we will have to make adjustments, curtail expenditure and defer some payments into the next fiscal year. If we are going to enable future generations to realize their dreams and aspirations and to fulfill the vision of the founding fathers and mothers, we have a responsibility to reduce the burden of the public debt. Unless we do this, we will have forfeited the dreams of past and future generations. These are worthy statements from the Minister of Finance. There is nothing wrong with a determination to maintain fiscal discipline. And I am happy, as I said, that our political thought is evolving in this way, and that finally we have come to the realization that we cannot borrow our way to growth. I think both sides of the aisle agree with that statement. We cannot borrow our way to growth. But I also found another statement by the Minister of Finance quite interesting. He made the statement in opening the budget debate. And here's what the Minister of Finance said. Our situation was compounded by those who found it politically convenient to propagate the view that proven laws of economic development did not apply to Jamaica. Whereas other countries had to work their way to prosperity, Jamaica, they said, could borrow its way to prosperity. I trust it is now evident to everyone that there is a limit to any country's capacity to sustain such fiscal irresponsibility. Jamaica has reached this limit. High debt prevents growth and limits the country's capacity to withstand unforeseen economic shocks. This is a profound statement. And it leads me to wonder, who was the minister talking about? Who was the minister talking about? Powerful statement. A powerful statement, Minister. But every study that I have looked at, and there are many, that examines Jamaica's current debt crisis, not talking about the debt crisis of the 70s and 80s. Every study that I have looked at that has examined Jamaica's current debt crisis, that is of the 90s, the 2000s, and now, every single one of them have concluded on basically three factors that have created this debt crisis. Three. The first is the collapse of the financial sector starting in the early 1990s that saw the creation of FinSac and the subsequent absorption of FinSac debt between 1996 and 2003, when the national debt moved, and this is not the IMF's definition of the national debt now. This is the central government debt, solely, where debt moved from 71% of GDP to 124% of GDP, a 52 percentage point increase. That is an incontrovertible fact. That goes down in history. That fact cannot be debated away. In total, the government created approximately $140 billion in new debt due to FinSac. What did that mean for us, Mr. Speaker? FinSac, yeah. And I hear the talk to the rescue of FinSac coming tonight. What did that mean for us, Mr. Speaker? It heralded the start of a stifling debt burden. But the government did not only absorb bad private loans, and we can have a debate about this. Should the minister have allowed FinSac debtors to just fail? Should the minister have allowed the banks to collapse? It is a judgment call that the minister has to make. And I was not in that position. I can't judge the minister for making the call, certainly with his cabinet colleagues, that we are going to take a decision to rescue FinSac. That is, rescue the failing banks and financial institutions. We can't judge for that. But you know what we can judge for? An interesting book written by Wilburn Prasad, probably the only book to be written on the FinSac issue. Asked you, when did you know about the potential collapse? And your response was very evasive, Minister. It didn't say, well, it came to my attention in 1994, or it was. So the question must be answered. In your role as minister, and even if you were to say that, well, I took over midstream, the question must be asked of the government. When did the government realize that a financial collapse was imminent? And these are questions that have to be answered by the FinSac Commission. You see how very important it is? Because you see, the minister said, the national debt now is the most important thing. But yet, they don't want us to know why and how that national debt came to be. They don't want us to know that. They don't want us to know that. Mr. Speaker, the government did not only take over the FinSac debt, private debt, and the academics, the economists, they use they use a term, they say the government socialized private losses. Well, Mr. Speaker, the government also absorbed losses of public bodies and government agencies. We recall losses being absorbed between 1996 and 2003. Air Jamaica, NWC, Bank of Jamaica, totaling approximately $41 billion. So within that period of time, Mr. Speaker, we put onto the public's back 140 billion and 141 billion dollars in new debt between 1996 2003. But the government, Mr. Speaker, was also bringing onto its books significant debt that it had previously negotiated but did not account for it when the expenditure was made. This is something, Mr. Speaker, that we all know as deferred financing. You remember that one, Audley? You remember how we had to fight to stop the government from doing this damaging thing? Deferred financing.
Keep quiet. That's the man.
Mr. Speaker, it's one thing to acknowledge the debt a year or two after you incurred it so that your books can look good. It's another thing that you have to pay high interest rates for that luxury. I am not here saying, Mr. Speaker, that money wasn't used to do good things. The Minister of Finance, I'm sure, would hasten to remind us that some of it was used to build schools in the north of the island. Some of it was used to do the Hope Road. Yeah, so we're not saying that it didn't do tangible things. But we must always ask ourselves, could we have done it differently? Could we have done it more efficiently? You see, unlike the FinSAC debt, the public who is bearing the totality of it can't claim to get anything tangible. Or like the absorption of the other debts. Public can't really claim because some of that debt is just going back to pay debt. Some of that debt is just foreign exchange losses. There's no asset to back that. That's just paper debt that we have to pay. That's it. That's the reality of debt. Mr. Speaker, recently, this year, the government took on contingent liabilities of Clarendon Aluminium Partners Limited, CAP, and Wallingford Coffee Company Limited. $258.3 million in debt. US, by the way, 28.3 billion Jamaican dollars. This year, government took it on. See how that debt is just growing? What is the public getting for the CAP debt and the Wallingford debt? We have to ask ourselves these questions. The third point, the third factor that drives the debt is the change in the nature and profile of our debt. Mr. Speaker, this started in the mid-1990s. In fact, it started, well, let me not say it that way. Let me say it this way. The profile of the debt started to change in the mid-1990s with the development of the local capital market, which opened new borrowing options for the government. Multilateral debt and borrowing, which had far better concessional interest rates, was rapidly replaced by borrowing from the domestic capital market, which came at much higher interest rates, but without any conditionalities. So the government ran from scrutiny if it were to borrow from the multilaterals and decided to take debt for which it was not being required to account in its usage. As a result of that, domestic debt prior to 1999 up to, say, even 1989, domestic debt averaged 28% of the total debt stock. Since 1999, domestic debt accounts for approximately 60% of total debt. So what we were doing is just borrowing domestically, literally creating money while borrowing. This was during the period of the good old days of government placing large amounts of debt with the domestic capital market, and not only in Jamaican currency, but in US dollar instruments as well. It was also the period of time that the Jamaican government gained access to international capital markets where it could float bonds and gain access to hard currency outside of multilateral institutions. This era of debt expansion led to the view that Jamaica could borrow its way to prosperity. Having destroyed the real entrepreneurial spirit of Jamaica with FinSac, the government now created a new kind of entrepreneurship. The government created a new type of entrepreneurship, the investment in government paper. That became the new type of entrepreneurialism. For a decade, the only game in town was government paper, and it grew with the government's voracious appetite for debt. Why was the government borrowing so much as it did? During most of the 90s and early 2000s, the government was actually running a double-digit primary surplus, meaning its revenues could cover its operating obligations. It could pay its workers and pay housekeeping with some balance to contribute towards debt repayment. But the government still found the need to borrow and borrow excessively. And remember now, during that time, the government did not face a global financial crisis. What happened, Mr. Speaker, is that as debt servicing increased, the government had to borrow to meet its debt service obligation. And remember now, it is now servicing higher interest debt, so it has to borrow more. That, Mr. Speaker, created the vicious debt trap cycle. You borrow to repay debt, and then you have to borrow again to repay debt. And so you have to keep on borrowing. And we keep doing that, Mr. Speaker, until the debt is now close to 2 trillion Jamaican dollars. That is the genesis of the national debt. So we ask the question, in the minister's words, who were these fiscally irresponsible people who have led Jamaica up a mountain of debt? Minister must answer that. Who was he talking about? Which minister propagated the view that the proven laws of economic development did not apply to Jamaica, whereas other countries had to work their way to prosperity? Jamaica, they said, could borrow its way to prosperity. That's what he said. You know?
Keep quiet. Keep quiet and listen.
Under which government did the collapse of the financial sector occur? Which minister came up with FinSac? Which minister used deferred financing? But here is the rub now. Which smart minister conceived the forward sale of bauxite in the cap deal, which eventually ended up costing more to produce than the actual price that was secured for the forward sale. You know what happened to us, Mr. Speaker, with this debt? We ended up having to pay our partner in the bauxite firm, Alcoa, Glencore. No, Alcoa, yeah, Alcoa. We ended up having to pay Alcoa to produce the bauxite that we had sold already. But when it came time to produce and deliver it, the price of oil had gone up so much that it cost way more to produce than what we had gotten for it when we sold it. So every year, the Jamaican government, whenever the oil prices went up, had to find money that it could have taken to build schools. And I tell you why I raise it. Because when I went to then Prime Minister Bruce Golding and told him about the need for school spaces, Prime Minister was telling me, listen, we have to find hundreds of millions of US dollars to pay Alcoa to produce the bauxite, to give it to Glencore, who had already paid for it at a price well below what it cost us to produce now. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is decisions like these that have created the debt today.
I hope it.
Prime Minister, go and speak tomorrow, so keep quiet.
Decisions like these. Mr. Speaker,
You don't want nobody to disturb, but you don't disturb me either.
all of this was done under almost 2 decades of PNP administration. And I think, Mr. Speaker, it's probably a little bit unfair for me to blame the minister alone. It's a little unfair because the truth is, you're part of a cabinet. All right? And obviously everybody over there share the responsibility. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, no wonder this government is doing everything possible to hide the FinSAC report. No wonder. But that report must come to light. Must come to light. Mr. Speaker, when the minister comes sanctimoniously to preach to us about living within our means and recognizing limits to borrowing, where was his voice then when his colleague predecessor made it clear that he was going to run with it? Where was he then? Don't come now to preach to us about fiscal responsibility. You were the ones who created the hardship on the people in the first place. And you are now subjecting the people of Jamaica to this pain and punishment because of your fiscal irresponsibility. Mr. Speaker, the national debt and meeting IMF tests are now the fulcrums around which government economic policy revolves. It is now the excuse or the reason behind every economic decision that the government is making. The imperative is no longer care for the poor or concern for the hardship of the people. That's not the issue anymore. No. All this talk about we love the poor and people power has no meaning to anyone anymore. If you listen carefully to the government, what the government is saying, we care more about passing the IMF test than passing the people's test. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. The government is now saying it's not about people power. No. The government is now saying IMF has the power. That is what the government is now saying. When we say to live within our means, cut our expenses, and pay more taxes, what the government is really saying is that the people of Jamaica must pay for the bad mistakes and bad decisions of the then government of 18 years of PNP administration. You know, Mr. Speaker, when the government has decided on who or what they are going to cut, they cut without mercy and they tax without thought. Take, for example, the recent decision of the JUTC to slash routes to sub-franchisees. Mr. Speaker, so concerned I was about the decision that I chose to check the reality for myself. I decided to get, Mr. Speaker, the real story. So I went and I visited the transport center and I got a briefing from the managing director, or what is it, the managing director. So, Mr. Speaker, here's what I found. The explanation is that in order for the JUTC to improve revenues, they must take away profitable routes from the sub-franchisees. Take away, that's what you have done. Mr. Speaker, it was presented in a most arrogant fashion.
Here, here.
Take it or leave it. That is
On a point about.
You cannot, nobody speak. Don't disturb me. Have a seat, man. Have a seat.
Minister Davis.
Let me give him a seat. You cannot speak to you that speaking.
Mr. Speaker,
Take your point about it.
perhaps because he's uninformed, the leader of the opposition, the leader of the opposition is misleading the House and the public. I held several meetings with the franchise holders. We discussed the issues and I overruled the proposal from the JUTC and expanded the number of routes on which the private franchise, sub-franchise holders could operate. And therefore, I reject totally, absolutely, the assertion that this was arrogantly dealt with. It's a refutation of what is a misleading statement, and therefore the House cannot proceed to have a debate based on a misleading statements.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Speaker, the member is entitled to his defense. What I was told when I met with the sub-franchise operators, they were of the view, and I certainly formed the view, based upon what I saw, that it was done in a take it or leave it fashion. Mr. Speaker, there was no consideration that the franchise holders had invested borrowed funds, that some of them would have taken their redundancy money and invested in a bus at a time when the JUTC was not able to meet its carrying capacity. Because that is the inequity of the situation. The JUTC couldn't meet their carrying capacity, and so they invited persons to make an investment. And now, all of a sudden, government say, for us to make some more money, these profitable routes that you have, we have to take them away. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speaker, could you, on a point of order, I would like you to ask the member to withdraw the comments he made in referring to the leader of the opposition as a wimp.
Which member was that, Mr. Mackenzie? Which member was it? Mr. Buchanan.
Stay right in your seat and stop the clock.
Mr. Buchanan.
Mr. Speaker,
Just a minute, Mr. Holness. Mr. Buchanan, I did not hear what is alleged. You have said. Did you actually use those words?
Mr. Speaker, the Speaker has acknowledged me. Mr. Speaker, the member from Southwest, St. Catherine.
Just withdraw, sit down. Don't not speak.
The member from Southwest, St. Catherine, Mr. Speaker, made a remark, and I thought it was wimpish, and I remarked to my colleague beside me that that's a wimpish comment. He who was asleep woke up on the occasion, hearing that, and misunderstood what was said.
We are going to evict you from this house. You.
Members. Members. The leader of the opposition is making his presentation. I think it is only fitting that we'll hear him.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, some people can bear sacrifice more than others. Some people have more means than others. What do you tell a bus operator who finds himself suddenly without income? The conductor and driver who no longer have a job. The mechanic whose services will no longer be needed. The families who depend on these breadwinners who probably now will not even be able to afford bread. What do we say to them? Sorry, my friend, but the money we would normally use on transportation, we have to use it to pay back the money we borrowed to pay back the FinSat debt. So we have to take away your livelihood to make the JUTC profitable. That is what we are saying to that bus operator. Mr. Speaker.
Members' time for speaking has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the member's time for speaking be extended sufficient to allow him to complete his presentation.
The question is that the member's time be extended sufficiently for him to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. Minister Holness.
Mr. Speaker, we believe that there could be a more palatable solution to this. The JUTC estimates that its carrying capacity is approximately 25,000 seats, with 50% of that as standing passengers. That target, I'm sure, was set over a decade ago and possibly is out of line with the current commuter demands. A revision of this, I'm sure, will reveal the need for more seats. So the assumption that the JUTC has now reached its carrying capacity with the addition of its new buses may not be an accurate assumption in the first place. And I encourage the management of JUTC to look into that, because it could very well be that they actually need the buses that they have cut from the system. But in any event, Mr. Speaker, the JUTC should seek to set higher service standards by reducing the number of standing passengers. So even without checking whether or not the actual demand is greater, 50% carrying load, well, 50% standing carrying load certainly puts pressure on the buses and helps to increase the wear and tear much quickly. So that figure of 50% of the carrying capacity standing should also be reduced. And when you do that, you'll probably find that you need more seats. So, Minister, I recommend that to you. But even outside of that, the solution could also lie in how the JUTC allocates its capacity during peak and off-peak times against the variable cost of operating the system. I'm sure that many times you would have seen virtually empty JUTC buses operating during off-peak hours. The cost of fuel and crew would make those trips uneconomical. However, allocating these buses in off-peak time, in other words, Mr. Speaker, giving the sub-franchisees the off-peak hours who have smaller buses that match the off-peak demand could actually save the JUTC cost. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that in these difficult times when we have to make tough decisions, government must show thoughtful and creative leadership to balance the need to satisfy the IMF's imperatives. And I've pointed out to you one way in which this could be done. Use the off-peak times when you are carrying high variable operating costs and substitute your JUTC buses with the smaller sub-franchise buses whose costs match the peak demand. That is a workable option. And again, I encourage the knowledgeable minister to look into that solution. Mr. Speaker, in our 4 budgets, during the worst global recession as a government, when our remittances fell, our backside earnings fell, and there was general fallout in government revenues, we levied a total of approximately 46 billion in taxes. We were called uncaring, wicked, evil government. This is only the 3rd budget of this new PNP government. And already they have dashed on the people almost 62 billion in new taxes. And so I ask, Mr. Speaker, who is the wicked government now? Who is the uncaring government now? Who is the evil government now? Mr. Speaker, who are the people inflicting pain and punishment on the Jamaican people? The JLP. It is always a tough call to increase taxes. It is never a good idea to take more money out of a shrinking economy and pull more money out of people's already overburdened pockets. It is even more disturbing when those taxes are not going towards the provision of additional services. or the development of new infrastructure, or increased opportunity. But these taxes are to pay obligations created by this government's policy failures and bad decisions like CAP. Nevertheless, the old saying is true. The only certain thing in life are death and taxes. So if you have to tax, at least tax smartly, tax thoughtfully, tax fairly. Mr. Speaker, we have made specific recommendations to the government not to increase transaction taxes. That is, transfer tax and stamp duties, for example. Instead, in its wisdom, or desperation, whatever the case may be, the government has instituted a new transaction tax, the withdrawal tax. Every Minister of Finance must be cognizant that a tax is as much a revenue earning measure as it is a signaling mechanism for the market. In other words, Mr. Speaker, we don't only put on the tax to earn the revenue. Sometimes you want the market to behave in a particular way, and so you use a tax. This tax is going to do more damage in its signaling than what it will earn in revenue.
You understand, Bobby?
And every minister must understand that subtle thing. The tax might be small, might be inconsequential, but the signal it sends does more damage than the revenue it collects. And such is the case with withdrawal taxes. Numerous studies have been done on these taxes, Minister. The Minister says he does not know whether the banks are going to pass on the tax. But all of us know that the banks are going to pass on the tax. Mr. Speaker, the tax is likely to be a nuisance. When you write a check for 10,000, you better be sure that you have 10,000 plus tax in your account. Otherwise, you will be getting back your withdrawal amount less tax, because it is not likely that the bank is going to pick up your tax if you don't have it in the account. So, Mr. Speaker, some countries have implemented the withdrawal tax, but they have quickly taken it off because they realize, Mr. Speaker, as I said before, that it sends a bad signal to business.
Don't distract.
Pakistan still maintains a withdrawal tax, and they do it for a particular reason. Well, what they want to do, and we don't have any Taliban here, so why you putting on the tax? Why you putting on the tax? Well, the reason why they put on the tax is to encourage people to use the banking system. So it's a disincentive to pay in cash or operate in cash. So it's a tax on the withdrawal of cash. But in Jamaica, it is a tax on every transaction, including transactions between yourself. So, which is what I can understand, Minister. So if I have two bank accounts and I want to transfer money between Bank A to Bank B, I have to pay a tax on that.
Yes, that's what you said.
Don't make sense. Mr. Speaker, this tax becomes a punishment for using the formal banking system or regulated transaction platforms. I'm sure the minister has heard people saying to him that they are now going to put their money on the mattresses because what they stand to get in interest on savings is less than the amount that they have to pay in bank fee. And on top of that, no, they have to pay a tax to use their own money. In general, Mr. Speaker, financial transaction taxes like this withdrawal tax, like stamp duty, have a negative impact on commerce. As a new convert to free market principles, we would have expected that you would have intuitively known this. Mr. Speaker, these taxes are counterproductive to the growth agenda, and that is why most countries have abandoned them. But there's another consideration. Yesterday I received an email from a Jamaican living in one of the Gulf states who is following with interest the proposal to create an international financial center here in Jamaica. And I thought I would just read what the email said. He said, has your government abandoned the idea of Jamaica as an international financial service center? Surely they must have. If the country is serious about becoming an offshore financial center, how can it place a general tax on financial transactions? It sends conflicting signals. People, in thinking where to invest their money, assess political risk, the favorability of the tax environment, and the strength of the regulatory environment and the justice system. With the imposition of a general financial tax on transactions, Jamaica has become less attractive when compared to other countries which are presently developing their plans to become offshore financial centers as well. How do you expect to compete with Panama, for example, which has no tax? Mr. Speaker, the government was not thinking when it implemented this tax. The tax will certainly reduce the pay of public sector workers who are already feeling the pain under the cold wage freeze. It will affect business operators from the small shop owner to the big retailer. It will affect the grandmother, and this is one that I found very interesting. It will affect the pensioner who has opened a JN account to receive her remittances or her pension from overseas. It is a dragnet tax which you cannot escape or avoid if you use the regulated banking system. This is a continuous tax. It is not a tax on value. It is a tax on the use of money. It is a tax on the rollover of money. So if Kevin pays Keisha, who then pays Simone, who then pays Donna, $10,000 each time, 4 sets of taxes will be taken. It is therefore inflationary. Mr. Speaker, we are strongly opposed to this tax. It opens the door to other brazen and thoughtless tax impositions under the guise of passing some IMF test. It would be irresponsible for the opposition to merely say we oppose the tax. Prime Minister, we resist this tax. This is now a point of departure.
Final moment.
Prime Minister, you claim to be looking out for the interest of the poor and vulnerable. In today's Jamaica, the poor and vulnerable use banks and ATM machines too. They have to cash their path checks. They have to take their remittances from accounts which they were encouraged to open. Prime Minister, withdraw the tax. Withdraw the tax or else. Mr. Speaker, we cannot let adversity blind us to opportunity. We cannot let crisis and desperation cause us to forego creative solutions. Making sacrifice does not mean that people have to suffer. But that is what is happening to this government. The government is not implementing creative solutions or taking smart decisions that will spur growth. It is not taking decisions that are fair to the people who are called to make the sacrifices. And most of all, it is not being true to its own call for sacrifice. The Prime Minister is calling on the Jamaican people to live within their means, yet our administration shows no solidarity with the poor. They are not leading by example with the belt tightening. The government continues to spend on new vehicles, contract jobs and consultancies for the boys and girls, not to mention the massive travel bill. You know, Mr. Speaker, my friend from Northern Clarendon says, I know better than that, as if to diminish the symbolism of government showing solidarity. You know, I found it quite interesting that...
Keep quiet, man. You're an irritant. Stop it.
That the Prime Minister of the UK, David Cameron, when he was carrying through his austerity program, he would normally have the convenience of flying on his own jet. But you know what he did? He didn't have to do it, but he did it. He flew commercial, saved the government hundreds of thousands of pounds. He didn't have to do it. No, it's there. But don't diminish the value of the symbolism. Don't do that. It is important that if you're going to ask people to make sacrifices, you must do it yourself.
Lead the way.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance is right. The Minister of Finance is right on one thing. We are at our limit, both for fiscal recklessness and the absorption of new taxes. We are at our taxable limit. For accountability and history, it is important to establish who caused the debt crisis that we are now grappling with. Indeed, we must judge our leaders by their deeds and not their words. At the end of the argument, however, we still have the debt, and we must still find a solution as to how to pay it. So the question is asked again, where is Jamaica going with all this debt? Are we to conclude from the minister's statement that for the foreseeable future, or at least for the next 3 years until the end of the extended fund facility, that all we can look forward to are more taxes, steeper budget cuts, and people losing their livelihoods? Is that what you are offering to Jamaica? Is that what you are offering to Jamaica? More taxes, more cuts? That is what you are offering. Minister.
Next Wednesday.
Minister. Minister, I went on a bus. I went on a bus went downtown, did my fact-finding before I came to here to make my speech. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? The common theme, and he says we're searching for a theme. He doesn't have to search hard. Anybody who he speaks to will tell him the common theme right across Jamaica. Times hard. Times hard because of the debt. And who caused the debt? The PNP. Mr. Speaker, I sat beside a cosmetologist, a young lady who was training to become a cosmetologist on the bus. And she complained to me, Mr. Speaker, that last week she bought some products and it cost her X dollars. And by the time the products finished, which would have been in a week, and she went back, the products went up 30%. And when she asked why the product gone up so much and the dollar don't value that much, the supplier explained to her that he has to buy stock 3 months in advance. And so he has to charge a price now that can get him that amount of stock to last him for 3 months. Oh, yes. She said to me, Mr. Speaker, after complaining about all that is happening in Jamaica, she said to me, me want to leave Jamaica because Jamaica not go nowhere. Mr. Speaker, I spoke to an ancillary worker, and she was almost on the verge of tears when she put her case to me, that her pay only goes to cover bus fare and lunch money. I spoke to a young man who asked me for a job on the same bus, and he left his resume with me for the last, Mr. Speaker, right at parade, when I disembarked. No, seriously, at parade, Mr. Speaker, when I disembarked, this young man handed me his resume, and he said to me that 5 months now, he is going around leaving his resume all over Kingston. Everywhere he sees, there's a job opening. Looking for a job. Can't get a job. And this fellow has a first degree from UWI. Can't get a job. But my friends opposite make light of the situation. Make light. Mr. Speaker, times hard, but it's not hard for them. Mr. Speaker, I spoke to a taxi man. Mr. Speaker, you know, it is a good thing, Mr. Speaker,
A big laughing matter, that's true.
that taxi man was carried on television and the news. And his complaints were carried when I was speaking to him. And you know what? Complained about how he was treated by the Transport Authority and the police. But he said, he asked me to ask you, Minister. He said that there is an anomaly. I had to leave something for the speech. Mr. Speaker, he asked me to ask you, publicly, a public business, yes. So he asked me to ask you, why is it that the Transport Authority is only licensing the cabs to carry 3 persons, but yet they are asking them to get insured for 4? And he found, no, it's 4 plus the driver, 3 plus the driver. So he's asking your minister to look into that anomaly. And I'm doing it publicly. I may not see him again, he knows now that I have asked you and that you are going to look into it. Mr. Speaker, no, it's a general problem, not specific to him. Mr. Speaker, it is important that policymakers know how the people feel. Things look very differently from the top floor at the Ministry of Finance than how they look in Half a Tree Square. My job as an elected leader in this country is to represent the views of the people in the highest court of the land, the Parliament. My job, Mr. Speaker, is not only to plead the case of those who are suffering. It is not good enough to say how much we love the poor. We must show them that we love them. We must give them hope. We have to show that there is an alternative path to the current path we are on. We have to provide solutions. Mr. Speaker, we are the party of solutions. All speakers on this side have not only brought the hardship of the people to Parliament and criticized the government for its inept handling of public affairs, we have also brought solutions and proposals to the table. In last year's budget, Audley and I brought 21 discrete solutions to the table, which could be implemented in the short and medium term. This year, I want to engage the country in some big ideas that could make Jamaica take that quantum leap. Mr. Speaker, idea number one, institutional reform. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica's economic history is a story of paradoxes and unfulfilled potential. God placed us strategically along international shipping routes and close to the largest market in the world. However, we have not taken full advantage of this. We have, through the years, received consistent flows of major investments. However, we have simply not performed in the way that we should. We have not grown in any meaningful way. As you have already heard, the crowding out effect of high debt is inimical to growth. But there is something else that is holding back growth in Jamaica, and that is the lack of institutional reform. It is settled economic thought that merely employing fiscal discipline, cutting public expenditure, and raising taxes and borrowing less and sticking to targets, while necessary to achieve growth, it's not sufficient. There must be an accompanying set of reforms in our laws, regulations, government. And you will have heard us say, Mr. Speaker, from time to time, that the government must complete the tax reform process. The government must start the reform of the pension system. And, Mr. Speaker, to be fair, we must acknowledge that the government has brought important bits of legislation, some of which were developed under the JLP administration, notably the Omnibus Incentive Act and the reforms of the tax waiver, the incentives, and the fiscal rule, to name a few. Those important bills have been brought. This, Mr. Speaker, is one aspect of institutional reform. We must undertake these reforms if we are going to actually set the stage for growth. We cannot build a 21st century economy on 20th century practices, laws, and regulations. Today, I want to take the concept of institutional reform one step further. Consider for a moment how you define an economy or a society. You could say that a society is a network of people, organizations, and institutions. Equally, you could say that the economy is a network of people, markets, and institutions. If you want to judge how well our society or our economy is doing, all we have to do is examine how well the constituent parts are fulfilling their purpose and how well they are integrated and effectively contributing to the needs of the wider society and economy. I believe it would be a useful exercise to conduct an institutional audit and review of our society and economy. It would reveal organizations that are not fulfilling their mandates, markets that are failing, and emerging social and economic needs which are there, but no established mandated institution to fulfill them. Mr. Speaker, this is not a conventional or limited public sector modernization review, which has been going on for years in one form or another, but which has produced report after report, but none of these reports ever get used. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about asking some serious questions of our institutions and organizations. I'm talking about radically transforming our institutions to make them relevant to today's needs. The greatest institution builder in the history of modern Jamaica is the Most Honorable Edward Seaga. He was a visionary who understood that you built a nation by building institutions. But sometimes institutions lose the vision for which they were created. They miss their purpose. They become self-serving. Mr. Speaker, when last has the UDC built a new town or revitalized an urban area? When last? With the great problems of urban decay and population shifts, where is the visionary thinking and creative execution of the urban development agenda?
What's your idea? What's your plan? Did you know that?
Or, Mr. Speaker, are our boards trapped in the mindset and fear that they cannot do anything because they have no money? Mr. Speaker, it is estimated that the real housing demand in Jamaica is somewhere in the region of 20,000 housing solutions per year. That's it. That's the estimate. Mr. Speaker, 20,000. That's the per year. Mr. Speaker, when Michael Manley conceived the idea of the National Housing Trust, he was seeing before his eyes the mobilization of workers' savings to accelerate the process of acquiring and building homes for the common man. I ask you, Prime Minister, do you think Michael Manley would be pleased with how the NHT is being operated today? With the savings of workers being taken as tax to repay debt? Do you think Michael Manley would be satisfied to hear that the NHT is only going to do 2,000 solutions this year?
Shame.
I don't think so. But that's one of our major institutions. Is it fit for purpose? Is it doing what it is supposed to do, but it is there? Mr. Speaker, HART NTA was set up more than 30 years ago to ensure that industry had trained and work-ready labor force. But it's a puzzle to me, looking at Statin's report on the average for the last 3 years of training in the labor force. Mr. Speaker, you would be surprised to know that only 11% of the labor force is certified in vocational areas. 11%. Approximately 13% of the labor force has a diploma or a degree. Approximately 69% have no formal training whatsoever. And we wonder why our productivity rates are low compared to our regional competitors. Edward Seaga would certainly not be satisfied with this situation. Mr. Speaker, I selected the three of our larger institutions to illustrate the need for an institutional audit and review right across the society. Many of these organizations were established 30, 40, 50 years ago And since their establishment, their mandates have not been refreshed. There has been no recalibration. As a matter of fact, some are not fulfilling their mandate and need to be revitalized. Some have been fulfilling their mandate, like the Rural Electrification Program. And I would dare say to the Family Planning Board. But these organizations need to be retasked to serve other emerging needs. And I will say that I've seen where the Rural Electrification Program is doing some retasking now to spread renewable energy. And that's good. And this is the kind of thing that needs to happen. An institution has reached the sunset. You have to decide, you're going to keep it or you're going to retask it. You're going to shut it down or you're going to retask it. Mr. Speaker, without this kind of exercise, we will continue to have institutions using public funds in inefficient ways and not contributing to national growth and development. When this institution, or when institutions and organizations lose their purpose, they become merely bureaucracies. They exist to follow routine, even if that routine doesn't serve a larger purpose. This becomes a source of frustration for those of us who have to do business with government or seek government approval. You're put through a long, convoluted process with steps and forms that seem utterly meaningless. And you wonder to yourself, couldn't this have been done in a simpler fashion? Why does it have to take so long to get things approved? The simple answer, Mr. Speaker, is that our institutions have become bureaucracies. They are not concerned with outcomes and efficient processes. They are only concerned with procedures. It is a duty of government to ensure that all our institutions, whether they be ministries, agencies, government-owned companies, or self-financing statutory bodies, that all our agencies are fulfilling their mandate. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we are simply wasting public funds. Mr. Speaker, I keep pointing out that in the 90s, we engaged in an exercise that expanded government. We engaged in an exercise that created a new form of public body called the Executive Agency. In the Executive Agency Act is the requirement that the executive director, the CEO, is reviewed periodically. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the government if these reviews are being done. If these executive agencies are being reviewed against mandates. Are key performance targets set for these agencies? Or are they just using public funds in the same way that central ministries use them? These are fundamental questions to ask because they have an impact on the efficiency of our budget. When we as parliamentarians sit here, we can't tell if what is presented to us is the best decision. We can look at it from a political point of view, but we can't look at it from a technical point of view. And so it is important that there is some eye, some element, some oversight body that is reviewing these organizations. 50 years now, we have a whole heap of organizations all on our budget, and we don't know if they make sense. Mr. Speaker, the way in which our system of government is structured, Parliament has part of that role. Every year, and the member from Central Kingston, I recall, was a crusader for this. He would stand up and ask, why are the reports late? You recall, why are the annual reports late? Why are they not tabled?
Arrears too.
And yes.
You were big on that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I'm not making a criticism of you, member. I'm not making a criticism of you. I'm just illustrating the point that Parliament should have the role of oversight of the efficiency of institutions. And it is done through the process of these institutions submitting to Parliament their annual reports. But you know what has happened, Mr. Speaker? And we're all guilty of it as parliamentarians. The report comes, they come late, they are 5 years behind, sometimes 2 years behind. We try to get them up to date. I suspect they're still up to date now. But we don't read them. These sessional committees. Yes, and the cabinet should do as well. Mr. Speaker, the committees of Parliament don't always have the resources to do this. We must give credit to former Prime Minister Golding. He improved the system by making the parliamentary committees headed by opposition members and gave more resources to the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. Yes, I'm talking now about the augmentation of the process. Yeah. So no, we give all the credit for his years of service there. No, well, I remember the formation. Mr. Speaker, let's be fair on this. It was the previous PNP government that established the Public Appropriations Committee. Now, Mr. Speaker, I recall that the then PNP government, I was the one, by the way, Mr. Speaker, who moved the motion here for the reinstallation of that committee. And for many years, I remember I sat on the committee and we met once. We called for the financial secretary at the time. And she was very reluctant in coming. And we had 2 meetings. And then after that, it died. It was not until we took over that the committee got the energy and started to meet again. So that's it. That's a fact. That's a fact. But Mr. Speaker, I want to go back to this point because I don't want to lose it. I want the House to be seized of it. I want Jamaicans to understand that where we are as a country, we need now to take stock of our institutions. Mr. Speaker, an institutional review is not an audit exercise. They have to be done against a clear national vision and a plan of action, and then we see how our institutions fit into the big picture. That has to be done with missionary and visionary zeal. It requires leadership whose time horizons are not the next elections, but who can think and envision 30, 40, 50 years from now. I have started that process to begin to look at our institutions and to see how they can support the growth agenda, how they can be transformed to be more efficient and effective. That's why, Mr. Speaker, I have appointed a junior shadow cabinet, a group of young, accomplished persons to assist in that exercise. We are not waiting until we are the government, then we figure out what to do with power. We are starting to use our time over here effectively to make sure that when we become the government, we hit the road running. Mr. Speaker, I want to put one other suggestion on the table. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk briefly about the knowledge economy. Societies and economies, Mr. Speaker, have evolved through various stages. We know about the agrarian revolution, when land and natural resources were the main drivers of economic development. We then transitioned into the industrial revolution, where capital and the production of goods became the main driver of economic development. Today, the world is in transition again. The information age is upon us. This is the era of constant innovation, where information is converted into knowledge and intelligence, which drives creation of new and improved products. In this age, economic development is driven by know-how and technology. Mr. Speaker, whenever I get a chance to speak on this topic, and I see the Minister of STEM, I always raise the point that we must not be confused by the explosion of cell phones and tablets and computers and the internet. All it means is that we are consumers of technology. We own our phone, we own our computer, but we don't own the technology that was used to make them. We don't own the know-how. And in today's world, it is the people who own the know-how that controls the wealth. That is the reality. That is the reality. So, Mr. Speaker, in everything that we have to do, we have to focus now on the creation of knowledge, know-how, and technology. Mr. Speaker, knowledge, technology, and know-how resides only in people. Only people can innovate. Only people can take existing information, use it to create new knowledge, and then embed that knowledge into products that drive economic activity. It means that if we are to grow in the information age, we have to invest in our people. In today's world, you can measure the wealth of a country by the level of know-how that is resident in its people. The starting figures for training can be used as a good proxy for know-how. With approximately 69% of our people not trained in any specific skill or application, we can have a better understanding as to why it is Jamaica is not growing. Why it is that even when we have big investment, Mr. Speaker, we still don't grow.
We don't get the benefit.
Mr. Speaker, I am sure that every Jamaican has by now heard about the coming of the logistics hub, as the Minister was pointing out. Incidentally, less has been said about Jamaica becoming an international financial service center. But both are possibilities for Jamaica. I will share with you, Minister, that I much prefer and think feasible, more feasible, the international financial center than the logistics hub. And we can have a private discussion as to why. But both are possible, but I think one is more feasible. But Mr. Speaker and Minister, we must be careful not to believe that a transshipment port is the same thing as a logistics hub. Getting Goat Island or wherever it is going to be located doesn't mean that you have a logistics hub. The two things are not the same, though they are connected. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica has always been close to major shipping routes. We have had a port for a long time, and aside from the infrastructure investment required, which we will see if Goat Island project materializes, beside all of that, we still need the investment in the human capital to make the logistics hub happen. Let me say this to you, Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister, Minister with responsibility for the development of the logistics hub. Well, two ministers. If I were the government, the money that I borrowed to do roads, I would take half of it and invest it in the Caribbean Maritime Institute and expand the capacity of the Caribbean Maritime Institute quadruple so that we can be prepared to actually become a logistics hub. That's what I would do. As I said earlier, Jamaica has a growth paradox. And in my last budget debate, Mr. Speaker, I spent extensive time explaining what this growth paradox is. We have gotten significant investments before in our bauxite, in our tourism, and recently in our telecoms. But the infusion of capital and jobs has not resulted in sustained takeoff of growth. We have only been taxiing on the runway, and then we stop. Billions put in for backside, billions for tourism, billions for telecommunications, whole heap of jobs. But we still just taxiing on the runway. We can't take off. One of the major constraints on growth, why we can't take off, is the structure of training and know-how in our labor force. So, if I were the government, the money that I'm taking to fix road, I would take it and invest it in developing the human capacity of our people. Because it is with that you're going to earn the money to fix the road. Otherwise, all you're doing, Mr. Speaker, is fixing road, but creating another debt trap. And this is how we have to start to think out the solution for growth. That's how we have to start to think it out. The growth not just going to come because all of a sudden we are exercising fiscal discipline. No, all that is going to do with the fiscal discipline is shrink your economy, make it harder for your people. You can't get the taxes, so you have to put down more taxes, and you end up back at square one. At some point in time, somebody going to have to say, let us go on a different path. Let us do something different. So today, Mr. Speaker, I want to focus on knowledge. And if we're going to have these two new industries, the International Financial Center and the Logistics Hub, and we're serious about them, well, let's make the investment in people, because those two industries, Mr. Speaker, rely on nothing else but people. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, what Mr. Bowling said is true. We are going to stay on the shore and look over at the Chinese working in Goat Island. We're going to pass New Kingston or pass downtown or Montego Bay, wherever the International Financial Center is located, and just look at the buildings with expats working in there. We have to make the investment in people now. Mr. Speaker, that is why we have already developed our plans as to what we are going to do. And I will share it. I'll share it with the country. The country needs to know. If we were the government, Mr. Speaker, we would totally rethink the structure of government. What we would do, we would take the training section from the Ministry of Education. We would take some aspects of economic planning from the Ministry of Finance. We would take some aspects from the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, some aspects from the Science and Technology Ministry, and we would create a new ministry called the Ministry of Knowledge, Economy, and Growth. Some of the tasks that this new ministry would have, Mr. Speaker, would be number one, increase training in the workforce. Number two, ensure knowledge transfer from foreign workers. That's critical. Government can't assume that because somebody is working alongside an expat that there's going to be knowledge transfer. You have to be deliberate about that. You have to actually set up a program so that that happens. That ministry would be tasked with establishing a system of national apprenticeship and internship for our Jamaican youth. Every Jamaican youth should be attached to some training institution where they can learn a skill, learn how to work, learn discipline, learn character development. National system of apprenticeship. No, man, that's my announcement. That's something that I did. I don't have to ask that. national, you would go into it from 16 onwards. So the profile, we'll get to it. I don't want to be distracted. No. Mr. Speaker, the other task of this budget, of this ministry, would be to ensure that skills and know-how match industry needs, both current needs and projected needs. And this is important, Mr. Speaker, to reduce what is called frictional unemployment. Jamaica has a very high level of unemployment, you know. 90% of the problem is not that there isn't any job. The problem is that there are jobs, but the skills in the market don't match the job. And it takes a lot of time for people to go and get retrained. So you need a ministry that is actually ensuring that the subjects that people are taking in school, that the career paths that people are going into, that they match what is currently needed and what is projected. Mr. Speaker, this ministry would be charged with the task of making Jamaica the regional training hub. And we are already placed for that, you know. Our training institutions, if properly resourced, could take on training for the entire Caribbean. Certainly our teachers' colleges could do that. The Edna Manley School could do that. Caribbean Maritime Institute could do that. Make the investment in creating Jamaica as the education training hub. Mr. Speaker, this ministry would also seek to identify linkages between industries and support these industries with market intelligence so that they know where consumers are, where demand is, what it is likely to be. This ministry would take knowledge, it would look at the economy, and it would create growth. That is where we need to go. So when people say, yes, you are passing the IMF test, but you pass 3 tests, that don't mean you're going to pass the other tests to come. What you're going to do? Well, Mr. Speaker, when people ask me, I know what to tell them. When people ask me, I already have plans put down to deal with it. I am not searching. I don't have to ask anybody else. We have developed these plans, and we are waiting on the people to call us to implement them. Mr. Speaker, I don't want our Jamaican people to be just consumers of other people's knowledge and know-how. I don't want our people to be the ones getting the low-skilled jobs forever. Mr. Speaker, I want our people to be able to run these new industries to the point where if it is going to be foreign-owned, the owners say, you know what, it don't make sense that I put people on a plane and carry them to Jamaica. The Jamaican workers are just as good and better. It's better pay them to do it. That is what we have to do. And you can only do that by restructuring your government to focus on human resource development. We must engage a radical revolution in our human resource training in this country if we are to have any hopes of growth. Mr. Speaker, economic uncertainties are not the only uncertainties that perplex Jamaicans. There are a number of topical social issues that are of concern to Jamaicans. Prime Minister, people want to know where we are going with the CCJ, Caribbean Court of Justice. We haven't heard anything about it, but people want to hear. Our position is clear. Ultimately, it is a matter for the people to decide. All right. Then, Prime Minister, there is the issue of ganja liberalization. Yes, you know, which? Driver? Don't stop at all. Colorado Mall. We have enough knowledge for ganja.
But they're chopping it up fine.
Madam Prime Minister, there is the issue of ganja liberalization, which has been occupying public attention recently with very active lobby groups, and I must say, Prime Minister, I met with a few of them, and they make a pretty compelling case. They do. But I've also met with other persons who express private concerns. It's such an issue that people who oppose are not going to likely to say they oppose. And it is still an evolving issue. But we did conduct a debate in this House, thanks to the member from Northeast St. Elizabeth. It was a very interesting debate. I sat and listened, but it was obvious that there were divides, not along party lines, but it's obviously a moral issue for people. It's a social issue. It's a religious issue for people. So even across party lines, you will find that there is no real consistent position, because the member from St. Anne, Northwest, made a very compelling medical case against marijuana, whilst the member from Northeast St. Elizabeth made a very compelling case for marijuana.
For export.
And of course, the Minister of Finance made a compelling case for export.
Export.
So, Mr. Speaker, you know, people want to know where we are going. People want to know where is this debate going to end. You know, people want to know. People want to come to a conclusion. Then, Prime Minister, there is a great uncertainty in the LGBT community and ordinary Jamaicans alike about your promise to review the Buggery Act. The issue, Mr. Speaker, the issue...
The time 100 for that. The time 100 for that.
Mr. Speaker, the issue... I will be meeting with them, don't worry. I will be meeting with them. Listen, don't... Mr. Speaker, there is great uncertainty in the LGBT community and ordinary Jamaicans alike about your promise to review the Buggery Act. The issue is very sensitive, of course, but I'm sure you will agree that more and more Jamaicans are generally discussing the matter, discussing the issue. And I think, Mr. Speaker, a way to finally bring some certainty to it would be to put it to the people. Put it to the people. You ask what my position is? I am a servant of the people. Put it to the people. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. And finally.
Put it to the people. Don't just pass a law. Put it to the people first. Yeah, pass law. Put it to the people first.
And finally, Mr. Speaker, there is the issue of the Queen being our head of state. I'm sure that Jamaica would love to have our own Queen. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am suggesting that we I would suggest my wife for Queen. Mr. Speaker.
Good one.
Mr. Speaker, my suggestion to the Prime Minister is that there is an election due sometime next year for local government. Why not make some arrangements to have a grand referendum at that time? It would be cost effective and it would certainly settle these thorny issues, while at the same time answering the question, where are we going on social issues?
Put them on the ballot.
Put them on the ballot. Have a referendum. Do it at the same time as local government. Let us solve these issues once and for all. Don't let them stay there hanging. Let's decide and move forward as a nation. You know, that, Madam Prime Minister, is true people power. That is true people power. Mr. Speaker, let us have this grand referendum. Mr. Speaker, the Jamaican people are quite aware that the country is going through difficult times. I don't get from the people that they are reluctant to make sacrifices for the good of the country. The bus franchise holders are not saying that the JUTC should continue to make losses and keep them on. That's not what they're saying. That's not what I got from them. What they're saying is that the managers, the minister, the politicians who run it, that they must exercise discretion and understand that the burden sharing must be fair. That's what they're saying. And we can't argue with that point. So we have to look for solutions that increase service, make the burden manageable, and make the government agencies less dependent on taxes. And there's a solution. If we put our heads to it, we can find it. But sometimes we make desperation blind us to opportunity. Mr. Speaker, while people are willing to make sacrifices, they don't want to sacrifice in vain. They want to get a sense that better will come, that there is hope, that there is a direction. That though we are going through turbulent times, people want to know that the pilot is competent, in charge, and that we will reach the desired destination. And if the people are unsure and they ask the pilot for assurance, they want to hear the pilot chart the course. They don't want to be told, go ask the co-pilot. Mr. Speaker, in the past few days and in the days to come, you will hear about how much the government cares about the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, caring is not just words. Caring is a demonstration of deep understanding of issues and the assurance of solutions. The budget does not give the assurance that we are getting out of crisis. The budget says we will be in crisis for some time to come. This budget says the government is reliant on taxes. Eventually, taxes will disincentivize businesses and revenue yields will decline, which will lead to more taxes to make up for lost revenues. This is, in fact, the cycle that we are in. Last year, the minister imposed some taxes. He said afterwards that there will be no need for any new taxes. Then he comes now and says, well, I thought we would not have needed any new taxes, but we told him that the more you put on taxes, and we are reaching our taxable limit, the more the yield, the more the actual revenue from the tax will fall. And therefore, you are going to have to now come and put on more taxes. That's the cycle in which you are, Minister.
Diminishing return.
That's the cycle. So all that you are giving to the people for the foreseeable 3-4 years till you come out of the IMF deal, if you ever, is more taxes. We don't hear the innovative thinking of how we're going to solve our problem. All we hear about is fiscal constraint and tax. That is not going to help us, with due respect, Minister. Mr. Speaker, the present tax strategy of the government is indiscriminate, desperate, and a disincentive to business. We have shown that the government's policy of devaluation is flawed and inimical to the greater objective of reducing debt. Hardly showed that clearly yesterday. Whilst you are trying to meet the IMF next Tuesday. Thank you for the correction. Tuesday.
You listening?
Hardly made the point very well that while the Minister of Finance is being faithful to the IMF with regard to reaching the true value, the real value of the currency, allowing the currency to devalue, he is being unfaithful to himself in trying to control the debt. Because the debt, based on your strategy paper, has increased by some $80 million due to foreign exchange costs. So you are in a conflicting position. You have two targets that if you meet one, you're going to fail the other. You can't, I leave it to you, Minister. You are the Minister. Mr. Speaker, we in the opposition are preparing ourselves. We are ready. We will be hitting the road to answer the call of the people. We want that young man who was on the bus dropping off resumes, though qualified and searching for a job for over 5 months, to know that we understand this plight and that we have plans to transform and grow this country. We are thinking in radical and new ways to achieve takeoff. We want the young cosmetologist to know that we will bring stability and opportunity to the economy so that she doesn't have to go to live overseas. Mr. Speaker, we believe in the Jamaican spirit. I am hopeful in the energy of youth, which make up 66% of Jamaica's population. They are not jaded by the failures of the past, and they are still open to trying new ideas and to take hold of the possibilities of the future. We believe in Jamaica's industry and enterprise. We reject the PNP's poverty politics. Under the PNP, social mobility is destroyed. By their policies, without any global crisis, they have decimated the middle class of this country and increased poverty. The competitive and progressive attitude of this country is that we have an open society. We work hard and talent is rewarded. And it is on that basis that self-improvement is achieved. That each generation can expect to do better than the generation that followed. That is the definition of prosperity. That is the definition of progress. Under the PNP, that is no longer the case. Mr. Speaker, we have been in the wilderness for far too long. The people of this country are waking up, like the people of Israel. We will have our deliverance. We will find our way to the promised land.
Yes. Amen.
Mr. Speaker, we believe there is a pathway of prosperity for Jamaica. It requires visionary leadership. It requires leaders who can see the forest through the trees.
Yes.
Right now, this government is only seeing trees. They don't know where they are in the forest. They need, Mr. Speaker, leadership that can stand up, look on the horizon, and if we're going in the wrong way, if we're applying the wrong tax, that government can say, wrong jungle, wrong tax. But what we have right now is that the government is in the jungle, in the forest, and the people asking them, where are we going? And the leader turned to our co-leader and said, where are we going? No direction. And that is how people feel. They don't feel that the sacrifice, Mr. Speaker, is going to carry them anywhere. Who will give deliverance to the people? Who will restore hope, justice, leadership, and prosperity? We understand the JLP is justice. The JLP is good leadership. The JLP stands for prosperity.